300 Persian officials were invited to the Kidarite realm and were subsequently executed or mutilated to humiliate the Shah.
Oh, wait. Mutilated. White Huns rise and decline. A video suggested to me, for me,
in
by me.
Past videos,
well,
we
the reaction,
the origins of the Hunnic tribes, which famously invaded the Roman Empire,
not that.
And
you
their
know what
relationship
I mean.
with the ancient Xiongnu, whom they probably considered glorious conquering ancestors. That was not the end of the story, however, and today we'll expand on the Huns with a story of their lesser-known branch. While Attila and his horde were menacing the Roman Empire, the White Huns bore down on the great Sassanid Empire and India in the east. But where did these enigmatic horse lords come from, and how did they impact life in the east? Much like their cousins, the White Huns were almost definitely a political grouping which emerged from the old Xiongnu Empire. Moreover, they also used the designation of Hun to associate themselves with centuries-old glories and victory. Those triumphs long ago gave way to a weakened Xiongnu remnant, which was forced ignominiously back into the Altai Mountains during the 1st and 2nd centuries AD.
I swear, the Great Steppe has like spawned in so much people throughout. It's like this place, it's like when you play a game and there's a part of the map that you can't go to, but it always spawns in like mobs or just like enemies or something like that.
Suffering attacks and deprivation at the hands of more powerful neighbors on all sides. However, by the 4th century, this situation had all changed with the weakening of external enemies in the south and west, and the strengthening of a new Roran Khaganate in the east. These upheavals were not helped by climate degradation in the Altai region during the mid-4th century, leading to the Hunnic population movement noted in Greco-Roman sources. As the European Huns embarked on their westward expansion, another branch of Huns suddenly pushed south into Central Asia. In the 350s AD, these White Huns from the Altai Mountains emerged in the region of Sogdia and quickly destroyed what was left of the Kangju state, which had existed for centuries. Now the White Huns started attacking the Sassanid Empire from the northeast. Moreover, these new Hunnic invaders played a major role in toppling the weakened remnants of the Kushan Empire in southern Central Asia and India,
I never heard of that.
unable to resist effectively.
I never heard of the Kushan Empire.
The ruling White Hun tribe, the Kidarites, possessed the prosperous Silk Road nexus of Bactria and its Oxus and Jaxartes rivers. The ethnicity of these ruling Kidarites has been a heated debate among historians for decades, with no definitive conclusion. However, the main versions are that they were Proto-Mongolic, Turkic, or Iranic. This was influenced by the account of Byzantine historian Procopius during the 6th century. He mistakenly thought that white was used to distinguish them from what he considered the Huns, with more of an Asian appearance. However, we know that the colour white signified a westerly direction for the Huns, while black meant north, blue east, and red south. Of the four,
What in the world? Why they got colors to signify this? What? That's why they call themselves White Huns, because they were like more white or something. Like, oh my goodness, that's actually funny. Why in the world? Why would they use colors to distinguish north, south, east, and west?
blue and black were almost always considered superior in steppe society. This meant that nomadic groups existing in the north and east, hypothetical Black Huns and Blue Huns, would have possessed seniority over their western counterparts. The origins of such tradition can be speculated to have begun during the revered Xiongnu Empire, which was in the east. Kidarite usage of earlier symbolism of the Kushans in their coinage led some historians to designate an Iranian identity to them, but it's becoming evident that, instead, they were Hunnic invaders who occupied eastern Iran, becoming Iranized after the conquest. We know that in some Proto-Turkic dialects, the word That's
crazy. So they assimilated. Oh wow, they assimilated and essentially became Iranians. Wow. Ah. Damn.
Kidarite meant the West. According to the Chinese source Bei-shi, a Kidarite king called Kidara conquered territory north and south of the Hindu Kush, and before 410 had subjected the entire Gandhara region to Hunnic domination. Even with their now formidable Indian domains, the Kidarites weren't content, and now came up against a truly formidable imperial power, the Gupta Empire, with its capital at the old Mauryan heartland of Pataliputra. During the 4-decade-long reign of the Gupta king Kumaragupta I, mounted hordes of White Hun warriors launched an assault into the Punjab, and an inscription from a pillar created later tells of how the attacks of these Hunna almost destroyed the empire. The Indians did manage to hold on desperately, and in the year 455, the beleaguered Kumaragupta abdicated the throne and control of his defeated army to a more martially inclined son, Skandagupta. However, even this new leader had troubles with the Hun menace. Further inscriptions describe how Skandagupta had to re-establish his lineage, which had been made to totter by the invasions. During particularly bad times, the Gupta ruler even had to spend a night sleeping on the bare earth. While boasting by the king claims that he vanquished the Hun threat and conquered the whole world, this is a fantasy. After this devastating series of raids and invasions, the Kidarites controlled most of the Punjab, and the Guptas permanently lost their western lands. The driving force behind these relentless conquests doesn't seem to have just been desire for plunder, however. Necessity probably had something to do with it.
Of course, I mean necessity is anytime I've learned about some type of migration or some type of movement or something like that, throughout history, it's always necessity because they have to. That's why the freaking usually out of food or something like that, always it's really hard to convince a certain group of people to get up and move unless there's some type of food scarcity or something along those lines.
Over the course of the later 5th and early 6th centuries, the Kidarites came under attack from another new dynasty of nomadic warriors, the Hephthalites, who had begun to push the Kidarites south into the Indus region.
Hephthalites, bro, I swear this sounds like a mythical name, bruh. Hephthalites. Swear to you, man.
The Sassanid Empire to the west, led by Yezdegerd II, halted payments to the weakening Kidarites by 442 after being subject to Hunnic raids for a century. By the year 450, Persian forces were even launching attacks into Bactria. The Kidarites were now surrounded from the west and north, and smelling blood in the water, Yezdegerd demanded tribute from them. The Kidarites refused, and the subsequent military engagement between the two powers was a decisive Persian defeat, reversing all of the empire's gains over the last decade. Even at their weakest point, these Huns were capable of trouncing the armies of a settled empire. What made matters even more grave was a dynastic civil war in Sassanid lands, which erupted shortly after Yezdegerd's death in 457.
Dude, there's always something going on with the Sassy Empire. If you're new to my channel, I call them Sassy Empire because of my Epic History TV. Eastern Roman Empire, Belisarius. Go check it out if you haven't already.
An elder child Hormizd ascended to the throne, but he was opposed by Peroz, a younger sibling who had the support of a few Persian nobles. The latter managed to gain victory, primarily because he had an army of Hephthalite mercenaries at his disposal, indicating the first of many times that this new ruling caste of White Huns intervened in Persia. As we might expect, this assistance wasn't free of charge, and in return Peroz I was forced to relinquish the easternmost Sassanid possessions in Central Asia. Despite suffering increasing attacks by their Hephthalite kin, the Kidarites were not totally extinct just yet. Sensing Persian weakness, they began attacking once again, and in 464, the desperate Shah Peroz was even forced to ask the Byzantines for financial assistance against them. When the
What in the world? What in the world? Now this is a collaboration I thought I'd never hear before.
Romans declined this request, Peroz instead attempted to placate the nomads by offering his sister in marriage to the Kidarite king, Kunkas.
What? Nah, bruh. Nah, bruh. How are you gonna do that to your own sister, bro? Nah, bro. Come on.
Steppe warlords often gained prestige by marrying princesses of large empires. However,
That is true, though. That's true, though. That's true. Like, I know that this is kind of the norm back then, but still, like, come on, bro. How you gonna do that to your own sister, man?
but Peroz unsuccessfully tried to deceive Kunkas by sending a lowborn woman instead. When this was discovered, 300 Persian officials were invited to the Kidarite realm and were subsequently executed or mutilated to humiliate the Shah.
Oh, wait. Mutilated. Yeah. I hate that word.
Peroz wasn't going to take the murder of his people quietly, and war was quickly resumed. The balance of power between the Kidarites and Sassanids was initially relatively even, but was tipped in Persia's favour when the now mighty Hephthalites intervened again. The Allied armies
the Hephthalites
crushed the Kidarite force and then wrenched Balkh from their control, after which they never recovered. Any remaining Kidarite forces retreated south into their Gantaran lands, where they were later crushed by the Hephthalites. The victorious alliance between the Sassanids and Hephthalites predictably broke apart, as after the Kidarites had been crushed, their Hephthalite cousins seized all of their territory that the Persians wanted for themselves, and essentially assumed command of the White Hun state. When the Sassanid Shah tried to take these prosperous eastern lands back from his erstwhile nomadic allies, the Persians were trounced by a Hephthalite army led by a Hunnic king known as Kushnavaz at Gorgan in 469. While Peroz managed to escape the first time, he was captured by the Huns on 2 later occasions, but managed to escape execution both times by paying a massive tribute.
Oh, okay.
In 471, insulted by Kushnavaz's letters, Peroz, supported by his Iberian and Albanian vassals, attacked the Hephthalites again, but was defeated somewhere in modern Turkmenistan and was forced to send his heir Kavad to the Hephthalite court as a hostage.
Wow, what in the world?
Peroz think twice about attacking the Huns again, and according to Procopius, the Shah was finally killed in a catastrophic battle at Herat in 484, in which almost the entire Persian army was annihilated by the fearsome White Huns.
Jeez.
Was a 2
Procopius, though. Procopius was the one who wrote this. Oh, just like when he wrote the Belisarius. Oh, wow.
year chaotic interlude during which the land-holding Persian nobles elected Peroz's brother Balash to the throne. The Hephthalites intervened after this, and instead seated Kavad I on the throne, marrying him to the daughter of their reigning king. After around a decade of his rule, Kavad was forced to seek sanctuary with his Hunnic backers due to a noble revolt against him, the details of which we'll probably go into in a future video. After this, however, he managed to convince the Hephthalites to supply him 30,000 troops to take back his kingdom. Though he managed to regain the Sassanid Empire, the price was massive. Kavad was forced to give away more lands in the east to the Huns, and burdened the treasury by agreeing to pay an increased tribute. Coins from the Sassanid Empire during this period were even countermarked with a Hephthalite symbol, indicating the dominance of the nomads. Worse was the literal dominance.
So, the Hephthalites, dude, the Hephthalites are already thick as it is. I mean, look at that. But basically, the Sassanid Empire is just essentially like a sub-region of the Hephthalite Empire.
Dominance White Hun kings claimed over the entirety of Iran. They proclaimed legitimate rule over the lands of Iran.
Okay, now he changed the color.
The Sassanids were mere vassals. This subjugation would continue for almost a century until the eventual reign of Khosrow I. With Persia now under their dominion, the Hephthalites turned east just as the Kidarites had, but on a larger scale. In the last decade of the 5th century, the valuable Tarim Basin cities of Kashgar and Khotan, which had centuries before been under Chinese rule, were taken by the Huns. Between 497 and 509, the city of Karashar and the region of Urumqi were seized. Chinese historical records, such as the Liangshu, lists among the Hephthalite domains Persia, Kashmir, Karashar, Kucha, Kashgar, and Khotan. Nearly all of the lands of western and eastern Turkestan were now under Hunnic rule. In India, as we mentioned before, the Hephthalites finally managed to root out the Kidarite remnant in Gantara and the rest of northwest India during the late 5th century, a development which turned out to be incredibly destructive to the Guptas. With its now relatively weak Kidarite buffer wiped out, the Indians began to suffer Hephthalite attacks during the reign of their king Buddhagupta, whose realm was in terminal decline by the turn of the 6th century. As the 500s began and the White Hun state reached the very zenith of its power, the Hephthalites appointed a sub-king known as Toramana to their domains in India. Such sub-kings were common in steppe societies, ruling almost autonomous regions under the overall overlordship of a higher ruler. The Indians knew Toramana rather grandiosely as the boundlessly famed ruler of the earth, who conquered western and central India as far east as modern Bhopal and subjected those areas in the west to total domination. His son, known by the name Mihirakula, expanded the Hephthalite sub-kingdom in India even more, and eventually came to rule over the entire north with his capital at Sakala.
Oh wow.
Unfortunately for the natives of the land, it is said that their Hun overlord was an incredibly cruel and brutal man, destroying Buddhist holy sites and temples, mercilessly killing monks, and putting monasteries to the torch. Eventually, the Indian
I will never understand Buddhism. I've tried so hard. I will never understand Buddhism. I don't even know how that's classified as a religion. I thought to be classified as a religion, you need to believe in a certain god, but apparently not.
Revolted against Mihirakula, captured and then replaced him with a brother. This Indian steppe domain was only whole for around 2 decades before it was retaken by a Gupta reconquest. Nevertheless, by the middle of the 6th century, the White Hun Empire ruled by the Hephthalites was almost definitely the most territorially extensive and influential in the entire world.
Yeah.
It extended from...
I was legit looking at this and thinking to myself, wait a minute, is there even any other empire at this point that's like this big?
The eastern Tarim Basin in the east and the steppe of Kazakhstan in the north to the prosperous lands of India in the south and the borders of Byzantium in the west through its Persian vassals. From the very peak of their power, the Hephthalites would soon suffer the fate of their Kidarite predecessors as a new, extremely powerful nomadic group rose in the east, the Turks, who had conquered the old Rouran Khaganate by the middle of the 5th century. Half a century later, they sought to expand their realm by subjugating the Hephthalites as well. Sensing
I learned about them.
To rid his empire of the hated Hunnic yoke, formerly tribute-bearing Sassanid Shah Khosrow I formed an alliance with the Turks against his Hun overlords. The Turkish Khagan reacted quickly to this request and crossed the border, capturing the Hephthalite-occupied city of Tashkent in the western Tarim Basin, and then advancing to Bukhara. Outside the city, a titanic 8-day-long conflict took place between the Western Khagan Istami and the Hephthalite king Gatfar. In this bitter clash of steppe warlords, the Turks were victorious, and the White Huns were utterly crushed, their military might severely diminished.
What in the world? But how did the Hephthalites decline so much? I mean, they were so prosperous. How could they decline so much? Somebody answer that for me, please.
The victors pushed south almost unimpeded and occupied Transoxiana. Though the defeated Hunnic armies fled south as the Kidarites had before them, they were trapped between their rising nomadic conquerors and the resurgent Persians. It was the end for the Hephthalite dynasty, and its last great ruler surrendered to Shah Khosrow sometime between 560 and 563. though they are mostly forgotten in popular imagination when compared to the European Huns of Attila.
So 560. Wow, so this is going on around the same time as Justinian Belisarius. Wow, okay.
The impact of the White Huns in Persia and India was just as profound as that of Attila in the West. For centuries, the great Sassanid dynasty had asserted its legitimacy over Iran by emphasizing their victories against a traditional enemy which had unleashed terrible destruction in Persian lands for centuries, the Romans. However, military defeat and humiliation at the hands of the Hephthalite Hun warlords rendered this obsolete, meaning that new claims to the throne had to be found. What eventually took its place was an almost nationalistic history of the Sassanids, constructed around the great deeds of an almost certainly mythologized precursor to the ruling dynasty, the Kayanians of Zoroastrian legend. These quasi-infallible ancient monarchs had undergone similar hardships against a conquering enemy and had eventually triumphed, a parallel which helped to excuse the devastating Hun-inflicted defeats of Sassanid Persia. This strengthening of Persian identity, inflamed by Hunnic domination during the 5th and 6th centuries, possibly saved native Iranian culture in the end.
Wow.
Sassanid dynasty.
Wow. Honestly, I low-key, bro, like watching all these videos low-key make me appreciate Iranian history a little bit more. I ain't even gonna lie to you, bro.
Now, and the Islamic Caliphate swallowed the ancient lands of Cyrus and Darius, Persia's enduring traditions would defy total assimilation.
Oh, yeah.
And remain a distinct entity in the Islamic world, proud of its ancient past. In the lands of India, invasions of...
Wow. Egypt did the complete opposite. I mean, Egypt just lost everything, bruh.
The so-called Hunna led to the creation of an entirely new political order. Fragmented, mysterious, and possibly Hun-led states of northwestern India, such as the Turks Shahi dynasty and the Sindh-based Gujara Pratihara dynasty, effectively served as a bulwark, shielding the subcontinent from Muslim attack for centuries. In the process of stopping Islamic military expansion in this way, they guarded India's polytheistic Hindu religion and culture from Islamization. Though the Muslims eventually broke through, beginning in the 10th century, martial conversions were mostly a thing of the past by this point, allowing traditionally Indian ways of life to continue into the future. Some of the militaristic Huns may have...
That's crazy, bro. All of these Islamization, freaking Iranianization, freaking hell, man. I'm a product of Anglicization. Yeah, I hate pronouncing these words. Freaking hell, bro.
Been instrumental in the future creation of the Rajputs, a people who would become known for their own warlike traditions, feats of bravery and valor, and especially their skills as cavalrymen.
I feel like anyone from the steppe is just naturally good at cavalry. Just anyone around that area of the steppe, or a little bit below Central Asia, like Afghanistan, a bit of northern India, like around that area, I feel like they're all good at just horses.
Continue talking about steppe civilizations, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell.
And you do the same thing too. You do the same thing too. You subscribe. You made it all the way to the end of this video, right? So you go subscribe. You go check out my other reactions on my channel, all right? You do it. You do it. I gotta like make a playlist for like when I react to like Turkic history. Anyways, go like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, go comment down below, man. Thank you for watching this video, man, and goodbye.